Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Judd, and I'm a third-year PhD student at the Yale School of the Environment. For the past 13 years, Biomes, short for Bridging Issues and Optimizing Methods in Environmental Studies, has served as the school's premier platform for bringing groundbreaking research to the YSE community. I'm honored to introduce today's Biomes speaker, Akim Daouda, a 2025 Yale World Fellow at the Jackson School of Global Affairs. Akim is the founder and CEO of Mwaana, a venture studio built on the idea that Africa's biodiversity can power the next generation of innovation. Before coming to Yale, Akim led Gabon's sovereign wealth fund, managing nearly $2 billion and pioneering Africa's first debt for nature swap. A World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, member of the Global Future Council on Natural Capital, and steering committee member of the Voluntary Carbon Market Integrity, Akim brings a unique perspective on how finance and science can serve equity and regeneration. Through Mwaana, he is exploring how the living intelligence of Africa's ecosystems can reimagine the way we eat, heal, and create, turning biological diversity into a new architecture for innovation. His work sits at the intersection of finance, science, justice, and nature itself, asking how value can finally flow back to the source and how nature can become the engine of a more equitable economy. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Daouda to the stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think the mic works. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Special appreciation to the Biome community. It's a true privilege for me to be with you this afternoon and to share something that is deeply personal, but also systematic. How do we move from extraction to origination? How do we move from a world that separates nature by lines on maps to a world that organizes it based on systems, living systems? This is the conversation I'd like to have with you this afternoon. Africa has 25% of the world biodiversity, but yet captures less than 1% of the bioeconomy. This is not only a value gap, it's also a dignity gap. And why am I saying that? The Congo Basin, which houses 6 countries, Gabon, Cameroon, Congo, DRC, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, which is the last lung of the planet, loses 700,000 hectares of forest every year. Just to give you perception or context, 700,000 hectares, it's 7 times New York City that we lose every year. And it's really critical because that ecosystem is actually the pump that pumps water into the air. And that water travels and feeds the Blue Nile and sustain the whole agricultural ecosystem of half the continent. And in that forest also lies molecules, organisms, knowledge systems that could power the next generation of food, health, material innovation. So one of the challenges today is who will own that nature and on which terms? And this is a question that arises through my own journey. After my studies, I started my career in Frankfurt in investment banking and in project finance. I was a pure product of finance, hardcore. And for me, environmentalism was just compliance, a box to be ticked in the credit approval process. I went back to Gabon in 2013 because I decided that I wanted to contribute my share to the development of my country. Like I say, Gabon is part of the Congo Basin. It lies on the equator. A small country, 200 million people, 200 million, 2 million people, but a real green superpower. 88% of the country is covered by forests. We're one of the few high forest, low deforestation country in the world. We have the weakness to believe that we are the most absorbing countries in terms of CO2 in the world. Our forests absorb 130 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. To give you context, again, 130 million is the total emission of Portugal and Belgium combined that is being absorbed by the Gabonese forest. Now looking at net sequestration, we absorb 130 million and we emit 30 million, all industry combined. So we have a net sequestration of 100 million tons of carbon every year by the Gabonese forest. But at that time, I could really care less. What I was really moved about was building infrastructure that our country direly needed. Roads, hydro dams, airports, ports. And I remember working on the financial closing of an hydro dam, 80 megawatt hydro dam. 80 megawatt for a country that has 400 megawatt installed production. So it's really consequential. And we were already 2 years late in the development of the project. And we had the ESG team of one of the development bank who wanted us to delay further the project by 6 months because they wanted to study some weed that are in the water that are called podostomacea. Maybe some of you know, I only know the name. But until now, I think until my last day, I will remember that name because delaying the development of a country because you want to do additional studies on some seaweeds, for me was madness. I remember going home furious. My daughter at the time was 2 years old. I remember telling her, you will never be an environmentalist. These people are useless. But little did I knew, a few years later, something will happen and completely change my perception towards how we value nature and the ecological justice that come with it. So fast forward, we in 2019, I'm head of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, traveling with the president to some rural places. And at the time, there was an article that just came out saying that Gabon has the largest population of elephant forest, 77,000 at the time. And during those visits, we have elders who usually have demands. And usually those demands are, we want a new well, we want new roads or an hospital. But that time it was different. The president has just passed a law to strengthen elephant protection. So we have this elder who come toward the president and he tells him, Mr. President, We are informed that you're further protecting the elephant, but who protect us? They destroy our crops. We fear for our lives. Our kids go to bed hungry. If you like those elephants so much, next election, let them vote for you. And for the first time, I could hear, feel, and see the cost of conservation. And I realized that conservation without dignity is not sustainable. And it's easy to romanticize or to talk about conservation when you don't have to live next to it. But when it tramples your life, it's become an issue of justice. I can tell you that the road back to the capital city was quite lonely. We had to find a solution because obviously the president wasn't planning to ask the elephant to vote for him. So I was tasked with finding ways to make nature count, not only morally, but economically as well. We started the process with the World Bank to have the framework for nature capital accounting. We joined the initiative of the Central African Forest Initiative, with which we received $170 million over 10 years, 17 million per year, for result-based reductions of emissions, which was great. But when you think about it, 17 million, that's not even the cost of our Coast Guard, Eco Guard, sorry, of our Eco Guard. So a drop into the ocean. So we needed to find something more transformative. We moved to the voluntary carbon market because at the time, Article 6 under the Paris Agreement was still a moving target. So we approached the voluntary carbon market. Oh, sorry, I didn't. Okay. We approached the voluntary carbon market and we hit a wall that is called additionality. Sometimes people come with fancy words just not to work. Additionality, what does it mean? It means that you only get remunerated when you improve your baseline. And as you can see, I said the voluntary market is designed for bad students. Why am I saying that? Your grades drops from A to D. You climb back to C, you're rewarded. You maintain your A+, you get nothing. And that's what is the voluntary carbon market. And actually, it's a market that is designed on a flawed premises that what is there today will be there tomorrow, which is not true. We know several countries that 15 years ago were carbon sink, and today they are net emitter. So the assumption of saying that we will only remunerate the improvement is actually perversive, and it's not conducive to the protection of the environment. When we look at some countries next to Gabon that I won't name, they depleted their forest for crops. And now they're coming back and they're planting and they get carbon credits, while Gabon can't get anything. But also realize that the cost of conservation is actually competing with schools, with hospitals, with roads for the country. It's good to travel around. I think, how you say, I saved a lot of miles, but it didn't really bring money to the bank account of the country, to the national treasury. So if we couldn't monetize or mobilize resources for the protection of the forest, maybe we could for the protection of our ocean. Here comes the conversation around debt for nature swap. So in 2023, we structured the first African debt for nature swap which was actually refinancing of $500 million of our international debt. It was with the support of the Nature Conservancy, which was really instrumental in structuring that transaction, and how do you call it? The American Bank, Bank of America, actually. And just to give you, and I'll be really happy to take this conversation with anyone who would want more details, but actually it was under the commitment of protecting our marine ecosystem and under the 30-30-30, so ocean, forest, and freshwater commitment by Gabon. This was really a landmark transaction, but also while working on it, I realized that those are instruments. They give you space, fiscal space. With that refinancing, we could save $150 million, which was still consequential, but you still don't create jobs. Debt for nature swaps don't build industries. What is the industry that we can build and co-create with nature? The World Economic Report indicates that 50% of global GDP relies on nature. But yet, we here still treating it as an externality. Meanwhile, it's actually the backbone of our economy. So I decided to move to the private sector and build a company which is called Mwaana. And Mwaana means offsprings, future generation, in several languages in Central Africa, but you can find it in Swahili and other Bantu languages. And the idea here is to say, we're losing biodiversity at an unprecedented rate. It was said as in a study that we lose approximately 2 drugs per year that could have been developed based on the biodiversity that we're losing. So the intention and the vision here is, how do we change our approach to nature? And how do we co-create with nature? Ensuring that we providing solution to the most pressing challenges of our generation, which is how we eat, how we heal, and how we manufacture. When I say to manufacture, I'm referring to bio-based materials. Today, today, several planetary boundaries have been exceeded based on our food system. Meanwhile, the biodiversity and bio-based material can provide answers to most of these challenges. So here the question is, how can we ensure that biodiversity works for the world, but also for the people who live within it? And I believe that if we achieve that, we will make finance work for the living and not the inverse as it is until now. So I'll give you a few elements on these 3 companies that are being built under the Venture Studio. We have Originum, which actually does biomolecular discoveries. So the idea here is to use artificial intelligence to facilitate discoveries of new molecules, validate them scientifically, add the indigenous knowledge and traceability, and license them to industries, in the food industry, in the beauty industry, as well as in the healthcare industry. Afrigenics. With Afrigenics, we're developing bio-based material, but also product innovation. And Riften Roots is our venture to build living labs, because we also have that vision that research and innovation has to be where the resource is. And we should not continue promoting the extractive model that have been prevailing until now. If the biodiversity is in Africa, the research and innovation should be in Africa. Thank you. Very happy to take your questions. Please.
Thank you so much. My name is Shira. I'm a student at the Yale School of Environment. And you talked a little bit about how carbon markets were not the answer that people thought they were, that you thought it might be, but you still sit on the ICVCM steering committee. Is that accurate? Can you talk a little bit about how you hold those two things to both be true?
Sorry?
Can you talk a little bit about your role on the ICVCM and how your lack of belief in the carbon market as a solution for Central Africa pairs up with the fact that you're on the ICVCM steering committee?
Yeah, of course. And this is a very good question. And I assure you, I'm not schizophrenic. The idea here is really you have to be part of the conversation. It's not a either or. And like you could have, as you've seen in my journey, is okay, we need to be, there's a word that we use a lot at ILC, which is possibilist. So possibilist means you have to be pragmatic and optimist. So Mwaana is my pragmatic answer. And my optimist answer is one point the world will realize that it's not sustainable the way we are approaching it. We've seen some evolution under the Article 6.4. There's a coalition that is being built between some African countries and some Asian countries under the corresponding adjustment. So we hope that we'll see some transaction in the coming month. But obviously also with certain countries leaving the Paris Agreement, it doesn't make things easy. I hope I answer your question.
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. I was wondering a little bit about Moana and how the profits are kind of used. Do they go to local communities or to the government of Gabon, or how does that work?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And that's a point that I can tell you've been following. That's a point that I didn't mention. The Mwaana is based, or the foundation of Mwaana is the Nagoya Protocol. So all the transactions are under access benefit sharing with a mechanism that is built around the government and the communities with an idea to have a biodiversity trust fund will ensure that the revenues are going to the preservation of the ecosystem as well as improving the livelihood.
Hey, Akim, thank you very much for your speech. I really enjoyed that. I'm Rahul. I'm from Kenya. I grew up in South Africa. I empathize a lot with the statement you made, right? That solutions and innovation should be housed within the African continent. But I want to go back to a point you made earlier that Gabon has not been rewarded for cutting down its forest and then growing them back, right? It's not been awarded for its stewardship, whereas neighboring countries have been awarded for cutting down its forests and growing them back. And beyond carbon, beyond the debt for nature swaps, is there a case to be made for not only historical reparations but natural and environmental reparations? And is there anything that a country like Gabon is exploring in that respect? Or is it a case that, like you mentioned now with Mwaana, you've got to go and fight a sort of more private, personalized, individual battle in order to bring these systems up?
Thank you very much for your question. And it's a very good question. On this one, I will say we're following two paths. The first one is around GEP, sorry, the gross ecosystem product, where we believe that by installing that matrix where we move away, or at least we create an index that is combining the GDP and the GEP, because as you all know, I'm not telling you anything new. GDP is a metric based on extraction. I will capture the value of a tree when I cut it and I export it. But the GEP will capture the value of the tree when it's standing and it's capturing, it's absorbing carbon, it's enriching the soil, and it's sustaining livelihood. So the intention here is if we get to that point and some province in China has implemented it, so if we can replicate that in Gabon, sorry, and have a combined index, at least that will give us leverage in the negotiation of our debt. What I want to move away from, and I recommend that personally, we need to move away from that, how do you say, paternalism conversation we'll have sometime that, okay, if I'm providing a service to the rest of the planet, please remunerate my service. Don't let me bear the cost alone. And let's not get into nonsense conversation, because decades ago when you guys came to buy oil, you paid. Why can't you pay for ecosystem services? So that's one conversation we're looking at. And the second one is, how are we ensuring that we're also moving just from instruments and building those various economy? An example, Gabon in 2010, we banned the export of raw logs. So we, how do you say, reinforce the first and second transformation of trees, second transformation of logs before exporting them. And the effect is it has reduced our deforestation rate to 0.1%, but it has also allowed us to move through the value chain and capturing more of the value of that industry and that sector for our economy. So I think initiative like this one will also help countries not having to bear the cost, because conservation cannot be, people cannot be victim of conservation. Right? Thank you. Guys, I think I should have spoke longer. Please.
Thank you so much. My name is Godnos Maremera from Zimbabwe. I am developing an initiative of manufacturing organic juices from African wild fruits. And then I was having a question, especially on the distribution of benefits. What is like the forest tenure rights, especially like are the forest a community or a common resource, or they are privately owned in Gabon, such that it can also help my framework on how I would distribute some of the incomes from the people who deliver some of the resources for the manufacturing program.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I really understood the full question, but if it's around how you build the benefit sharing framework, is it that?
Yeah, I wanted to say like if it's like a community on the resource, the distribution of the benefits, because it becomes a challenge, like who will benefit from this initiative? How will they distribute the benefits equally amongst the people who are entitled to have them? Okay. So I was having a question on who owns the forest resources, so that I will not like I will not prioritize maybe only the power holders who are like the custodians, but they are not the owners.
Excellent, and I'm glad you precise your idea, because I think there's several things to unpack. If the forests or the places, the ecosystem is community owned, you need to have your public hearings, and that has to be based on negotiation, where you will also apply the existing framework. Like Nagoya is a framework that can help you address that conversation. But also, based on what you just referred to, I'm losing my train of thoughts. Based on what you just referred to, we have the Nagoya Protocol on one side, but also you need to, okay, exactly, the government, it depends. I don't know how your country is framed, but that gives me the occasion to speak about giving forest and ecosystem legal rights. because that's how you implement the permanence, and it doesn't depend on which administration is in power and how it can change. Because I guess coming from the same region, I think I understand the challenge with cyclical changes. But I'm not really knowledgeable about the regulatory framework in your country. But happy really to take the discussion after and maybe share more details on how we approached it.
Hi, Akim. Thank you so much for being here. What do you think about biodiversity credits as a means of financing good land stewardship?
Have you seen any biodiversity credit transaction?
A couple.
Okay. Mine to a certain magnitude?
Sorry, what was that?
To which magnitude?
Oh, very small.
Okay, exactly. You see, like we're very good at creating a problem. We don't find a solution and we go create another problem. That's what we did. Instead of solving the problem of the carbon credit, like, okay, this is too complicated. Let's create something else that will keep us busy and make us organize conferences and roundtables. At the end of the day, we can call it biodiversity credit, carbon credit. The reality is like this is the ecosystem that sustains our livelihood. How do we maintain it? It's a very simple question when you think about it. Last year, I was at the NASDAQ, and they were commending and acclaiming companies who raised $600 million to do carbon capture. Carbon capture. How much can you scale carbon capture? When we have the oldest, best technology that exists. But then we're having conversation about carbon credit, biodiversity credit, and so on and so forth. We really, at some point, I think we really have to get serious and stop going buying fancy furniture when the roof is on fire. So I didn't really answer your question. I think if you ask me personally, I won't put too much of my time on biodiversity credit because, yeah. I think.
So
Oh.
thank you for a nice presentation. I want to get back to what I think is like, I understand is your core expertise for a moment, and you know a lot of things. I want to ask about the three companies that are up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be informative for our students here to learn a little bit more about how did you go about structuring financing for them? Are they not profitable? When do you expect them to turn a profit? And how is the risk distributed both on the environmental side, but also the financial risks? How have you managed to distribute those?
Thank you very much for this very, very straight to the point question. And I think for this, I will have to come to your office hours because as I mentioned, these are really new ventures and I'm really using my time here at Yale to finalize the designs. So for the moment, they're bootstrapped between my partners and I. We have some concessions for the Rift and Roots. Regarding Originum, we're working on two bioactive ingredients, one which is for the oil industry, and the other one I really like to tell these stories, which is vegetable protein, which is 2,000 times sweeter than sugar, which is called oubli. For some of you who speak French, means to forget. And actually, back in the days, mother used that plant to wean off the infant from breast milk. And the idea here is to revalidate the science and scale it and package it with the indigenous knowledge and license it to industries in terms of replacement. It's like stevia, but without the aftertaste. But I will definitely take that opportunity to come and meet you.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm right here.
Okay.
I want to go back to the example of the bad student, a start student not being rewarded. My take on that is that that problem kind of underlines the fact that we might not be, or the carbon markets might not be a good model for measuring the risks or the trade-offs that these countries are facing when it comes to conservation. I wanted to ask your kind of take on that. What do you think about this? And then possibly as a board member for the voluntary carbon markets, what are your channels or role to inform this kind of inclusion of other types of risks that might not be currently included in the markets? Thank you.
I'm really glad you asked that question. When you look at, and that's really the case of Gabon, right? We're not developing project. The country is a project because the challenge that you can have or the risk, one of the main risks is leakage. Okay, you're saying that you're conserving this part, but actually you're destroying another part of the country. So here we have a net sequestration all over the country of 100 million tons. I mean, it's proven, verified by the UNFCCC. And talking about biodiversity credit earlier, even if you come and you replant trees, you will not replant the elephant or the biodiversity that you would have lost by depleting that forest. So actually, the act of conservation provides you co-benefits that projects won't, right? So that's one. And to your second question, the VCMI, it's a how do you say, it's an advisory. So they make recommendations, right? And part of that, my role in there is really working on, and how do you say, accelerating the coalitions between buying countries and supplying countries under the Article 6 for corresponding adjustments. Sorry. Have I answered your question? Yeah.
Thank you. I just was wondering, in general, how worried are you about the growing role or a growing role of mining in Gabon? Because it's not just the mining of the local area, but it would also be the infrastructure, say, to remote areas that brings all the sprawl, et cetera, and sort of how big of a risk do you see this?
Not sure that you're asking about the mining industry. Okay, perfect. Gabon, the third, our first income earner is oil and gas. The second one is timber, and the third one is mining. The country is the largest exporter of manganese. And we have found we have one of the largest deposits of iron ore. I think it's 1 billion tons. And that's a real challenge because it's really in the heart of the country. It will require building railways, a new port, significant environmental challenges. I won't say impact. But now, I don't know. That's the question. I really don't know what to tell a government who has to pay salaries, build schools and hospitals. That's the challenge. And I think unless we're capable of providing an answer to that, the government will not take its eyes away from this project. Like I read in the Ministry of the Future, it's easier to anticipate the end of the world than the end of capitalism. So with the how do you say it? The loss of sense of urgency that we have regarding climate, countries of Gabon, like Gabon, have no choice than to consider all the options in terms of providing for their population. Not really answering your question again, but that's my answer. Okay, Stav. Sorry. I'm biased.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time. And thank you for that question. It kind of builds up on what I'm about to say. So for me, every time I hear all these credits and meetings and et cetera, sounds like colonialism 2.0. So I wanted to maybe tap on your knowledge in the business world before getting into the environmental space. I have done the natural capital accounting for countries across the continent. And I always ask one question which I haven't fully understood or fully gotten a satisfactory answer. How do we industrialize, move our people out of poverty, address the high levels of unemployment in the continent, considering that our population is booming, and some of these resources provide a benchmark on which we can leverage our growth. So I want to get your views and opinions on how do we industrialize given the current circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, but I think you answered it yourself, right? And that's the dilemma we're living, right? How do you align ecosystem protection with economic development? And so far, a country like Gabon, also based on the size of our population, we have been able to be a good student. But if we're not supported, the country will have no choice than continue its industrialization until we build the bioeconomy that the world deserves. So I'm sorry, I guess today is not the day you're getting your satisfactory answer, but because I think the problem is really complex, right? And it will really require, and you mentioned paternalism, is that the word you use? And I think that's the word, because let's also address the elephant in the room. There's power dynamics behind these conversations. The biodiversity is in one part of the world. The decision makers are in the other part of the world. So that's, I guess that's the challenge for our generation to solve. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Akim. You're very inspiring. And it's not the first time that I'm hearing the story. So I have a few questions for you. One, if you had today $100 billion, what would be the biggest dreams you would like to achieve in your work? And second, what do you feel are your current challenges? And thinking about the students sitting here who are dealing with the challenges of climate at a very, very difficult time, what do you think they can do in order to speed up the pace of progress and to really think out of the box and be leaders on this field?
That's why I didn't want you to ask any questions. Thank you very much, Stav. Your intervention are always to the point. I think on the first one, if you give me $1 billion today, the Congo Basin is 10,000 different species of plants, 30% of which are endemic to that region. And I wish what I'm gonna say comes from me. Actually, it comes from the Planetary Solution website. They say that we're losing biodiversity at an unprecedented rate. And it's like having a library that is burning before we even identify the books, let alone studying them or reading them. So if I would have that money today, I will invest massively in the protection and the discoveries of the wisdom and harness the wisdom that that forest can provide, because I'm convinced that we have solutions for disease that don't even exist yet. But unfortunately, nothing is being done. So for the first question, so you can take your check out, we can discuss. The second point was around the students. My challenges. It's very interesting. I have challenges, but I see them as opportunity, especially since I started this program with the the depth and the breadth of knowledge and resources. And let me say it, you guys are really lucky, you spoiled. Um, with the breadth of resources and knowledge available, I really just want to wake up in the morning and get at it. So I don't see it as challenges, but I really see this space and this ecosystem with all you guys as really the playground to test the ideas, which will answer hopefully some of the challenges that we discussed today. And for the students, it's really, really simple. Be possibilist, be pragmatic, but never lose your hope, because without hope, we have nothing less. Answer.
Hi there. I'm a lecturer here and really excited about what you're talking about here for some of the sort of systems thinking we're doing and wrestling with complexity. So you mentioned that one of your products helps the oil and gas industry. How do you wrestle with the sort of the truths that have to that kind of coincide, and how do you attract talent that might want to not see fossil fuels expand?
No, sorry, I didn't express myself properly. It's oil for the cosmetic industry.
So is it fossil fuels? It's not fossil.
No. It's biological. It's actually an oil that is extracted from a fruit.
Thank you.
And I stay away from oil and gas.
Okay, well, if you can join me giving a round of applause. Also, do you want to say for any students who are interested, we normally do a dinner. So Akim and I will be going to September in Bangkok tomorrow, not today, tomorrow at 6. So the sign up is on the link in that email that Lori sent out. And if you want like to talk to Lori right now, you can about that as well. And Lori's back there in the jacket raising her hand. So thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.